لقد رضي الله عن المؤمنين إذ يبايعونك تحت الشجرة فعلم ما في قلوبهم فأنزل السكينة عليهم وأثابهم فتحا قريبا ومغانم كثيرة يأخذونها وكان الله عزيزا حكيما. وعدكم الله مغانم كثيرة تأخذونها فعجل لكم هذه وكف أيدي الناس عنكم ولتكون آية للمؤمنين ويهديكم صراطا
أعوذ
مستقيما.
بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم جبرائيل وميكائيل وإسرافيل فادر السماوات والأرض عالم الغيب والشهادة أنت تحكم بين عبادك فيما كانوا فيه يختلفون اهدنا لمن تقتل من الحق بإذنه إنك تهدي من تشاء إلا صراط المستقيم. The discussion here is going to be the book about the fortress of the Muslim. It's a book that is a small book. It's a dua book, and we're going to pick. What I'm going to do is discuss one particular dua that people should read constantly, which is Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min adhab al-qabri وأعوذ بك من فتنة المسيح الدجال وأعوذ بك من فتنة المحيا والممات اللهم إني أعوذ بك من المثام والمغرب. Now, this translates as, O Allah, I seek refuge in you from the punishment of the grave, and I seek refuge from the trials of the false Messiah, and I seek refuge in you from the trials of life and death. O Allah, I seek refuge in you from the sin and from debt. Now the first phrase, which is, O Allah, I seek refuge in you from the punishment of the grave, is that a person should always seek refuge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the punishment of the grave. Because the process of punishment for the disbeliever when he passes away is the punishment of the grave, first of all, and then the punishment of hellfire. So as Muslims, we try to remember Allah as much as possible and to stay away from that which causes harm, and we avoid the punishment of the grave and the punishment of the hellfire. Every soul will taste death. Allah says in the Quran, Kullu nafsin da'iqatul maut. Every soul shall taste death. Now, when we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the punishment of the grave, we're seeking the understanding of not being punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when we're in this life, we rectify ourselves and become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for doing acts of worship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. So this is the first phrase, O Allah, I seek refuge in you from the punishment of the grave. The second phrase is used, and I seek refuge from the trials of the false Messiah. The false Messiah is known as Masih ad-Dajjal, the liar, the one that lies constantly, and we seek refuge in refuge from him, because in one of the major signs of Qiyamah is that the Dajjal will appear and will test mankind and test people's faith, and those who disbelieve will follow the Dajjal, and those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold on to their religion. It's going to be a test and a trial like never seen before. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us to protect us from the false Messiah. The third phrase is, I seek refuge in you from the trials of life and death. Now, the trials of life and death, for example, life itself in this world that we're in, is that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the struggles that a person endures in this particular world. We seek Allah's protection from the trials of life itself. For example, the trials of health, the trials of wealth, these particular trials, and the trials of spirituality as well. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us and guide us through this. The trials of death is, for example, the scales that are placed upon a person who's being trialed, and therefore the judgment itself is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we seek Allah's protection from the trials of life and from the trials of death. And the last phrase is, O Allah, I seek refuge in you from sin and from debt. We seek refuge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through sins, because one who sins constantly is shaking the hand of shaitan, and therefore befriending shaitan, because shaitan is one who's distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one that sins, and shaitan wants to bring you to the hellfire. How? By making you sin, by corrupting your heart and corrupting your spirituality. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us from shaitan. أقول قول هذا واستغفر الله وأتوب إليه.